The tip we're always we're going to rip off BBK and say, what kind of home did you, or ask, what kind of home did you grow up in?
Sure. Yeah. My parents didn't go to church at all. Um, my dad actually spent, um, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years in a Catholic orphanage. And whenever the idea of church came up, he was like, no thanks. The nuns, I guess, treated him badly. So he had no interest. And my mom, I remember one time when the Jesus movement was happening, she said, what's all this stuff about Jesus? And I said, well, tried to explain it to her. And she goes, well, everybody believes in God. But, it was kind of a cultural Christianity. And so I had very little. I think actually when I was in grammar school in San Jose, like maybe fifth grade, they used to take us, you had to sign up whether you were a Catholic or a Protestant or a Jew. And once a week, we would go to a religious, like half hour.
Mhm.
And I enjoyed that, but they don't do that anymore. Yeah. So, but going back to kind of my life story, I was born in 1949
Okay.
in San Jose. And my mother left my biological father when I was about 2 years old. I guess he was an alcoholic and lost his job. And when he wanted to move back in with his mother, my mom said, "Well, that's the end of this." So we moved back to her parents' place in Pismo Beach.
Hmm.
Have you ever been to Pismo?
I'm sure I have. I just don't remember much about it, to tell you the truth. I know there are most places in California, but
It's a little bit south of San Luis Obispo,
Mhm.
and it's when I grew up there, it was about 1,500 people, very small town, and it was really idyllic.
Mhm.
My grandparents had like 5 cottages right there, almost on the beach, and I could just walk out the backyard and down a trail through the ice plant, and I was
Mhm.
down on the beach. And I think that that environment was so beautiful. I'd walk along the seashore and pick up these little periwinkle shells,
Mm.
and each one of them had a different color and a different pattern.
Mhm.
And I remember just being absolutely awestruck by the beauty of these things. And I think that was my first sacred experience was nature, the beauty of nature. And then,
California used to be like that for people.
yeah, yeah, fantastic. It just got too crowded.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, I wrote down some notes, so I'm going to glance at them every once in a
Sure.
while. Uh, so,
Well,
I
let
was
me
living,
stop there real quick with the sacred experience. Did you
yeah,
realize it was a sacred moment in the moment? I mean, or
no,
was it in retrospect?
no, only in retrospect. What I in thinking about the sacred, uh, I realized that my experience down there is what gave me. It just filled me with awe,
Mm.
and looking back on it, I can see that now. And but so when okay, I went to kindergarten there, and till I was about 6, went to kindergarten for 1 year. And one day when I was walking down the sidewalk near my grandma's house, I looked up at the wires on the telephone pole and I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I could jump up that high. Just I'm 5, 6 years old. And I jumped and it seemed like I went pretty high. And then I looked up there again and I saw this angel. And this angel said, you can do this. Go ahead and try again. And so I jumped, and it felt like I went about 10 or 12 feet into the air, not all the way up to the wires, but then I came
Huh.
back down and I didn't tell my parents about it because I thought maybe I would get in trouble.
For talking to strange angels.
Yeah, yeah. So that was, an early spiritual experience. Then when I was,
That's very wild. How old were you again?
I was 6.
My goodness. Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
And I've read over the years many things. I've read something about like maybe when you reach the age of 6, maybe a certain kind of spiritual energy comes into people.
Okay.
Like an additional helper. I thought maybe that was something, but so then my mother remarried uh, a fellow named Al Cossi, and so he's the only father I knew. Real mellow person, Italian, uh, but very quiet. And being Italian in World War II was not a good thing. So
Right.
so he didn't really, promote it.
Right.
But so we moved to San Jose. He got a job at IBM after being a knee-high truck driver in Pismo and San Luis Obispo, blue collar worker, and so it really disappointed me. I didn't want to go to San Jose. I wanted to stay in Pismo,
Mm-hmm.
and I always thought and hoped that I'd be able to come back. And so we got up there, and every holiday we'd drive down 200 miles to my grandma's house and spend all the holidays down there and go to the beach. And then I'd get in the summer, my mom and I'd go down and spend most of the summer. And my dad had come down for the weekend or a week. And Pismo had a pier that stuck out in the water there, and I could go out there and catch perch and jack smelt. And my grandma said, "You catch them, I'll cook them." So, and Pismo clams. That was back in the day when you could pick up a clam that was, 9 inches or well,
Mm.
8 inches right
Sure.
on the right on the shore. And so uh, by the time I got to be about 10, I would take the Greyhound bus down there myself
Wow.
and spend the whole summer. And the little town had a movie theater, a roller rink, skating rink, a bowling alley, and a bunch of little shops. And it was like it was too good. It was
Mm.
idyllic,
Mm.
warm water. And so then uh, in grammar school, I always found it very easy. I remember the teacher used to have gold stars
Mm.
and people's names, and I was always way out there ahead. And it really came easy and kind of
Mm.
gave me somewhat of an ego. And I was student body president in the 8th grade. Then when I got into high school, it was all downhill
Mm.
and just a lot of partying in San Jose. Track homes had a lot, but one nice thing about track homes is you have a lot of friends up and down the street. But on the other hand, it's just like everybody's like I don't know, like a peg in the hole.
Mm.
And so uh, when I got to my senior year, my girlfriend was 1 year behind me, and she dumped me. And she was a cheerleader, and I can understand now, looking back, I was too controlling, and she wanted to have her cheerleader life, and so I had a broken heart, and I graduated in 1967, and there was a full draft.
Mm.
Vietnam War was going full bore,
Sure.
and my parents didn't go to college, so I was really naive. Like I said, I was just partying, lots of wine and beer and marijuana and other things. And I had this idea that really the only people that went to college were lawyers and doctors,
Mm.
and I had no clue. and my grades were so bad that I couldn't have gone anyway. So uh, I I had a best friend, and he had a sister that was 1 or 2 years older,
Mhm.
and she got married, and her fiance, then her husband Jim, went to Vietnam in the Marine Corps, and he got killed.
Mm.
And my friend and I were standing down at his house, uh, down the street, and this green Marine Corps car drove up, and they said Jim's been killed.
Mhm.
So Ernie and I decided we'd get a bottle of whiskey and drink it and figure out what to do next. And we did that. And we decided that instead of waiting to get drafted, we'd go downtown and see which branch of the military we might want to go into. And so we went down there. And it's like the Air Force was 4 years, the Navy was 4 years,
Mhm.
Army was two, Marines were two. And I think both of us thought, the quicker we could get this over, the better.
Mhm.
you know, and another sort of naive idea. So then we thought, well, if we're going to go fight with either the Army or the Marine Corps, might as well go with the best, the toughest outfit. So we both joined the Marines,
Mhm.
and I remember people saying, well, when you take some tests, uh, you know, maybe they'll educate you, like maybe in electronics or something or other. Well, they gave me a rifle. You're
If you were in the Marines in Vietnam, yeah, that's what happened. That's still pretty rough what happens.
you're a rifleman.
Yeah.
So I went to boot camp in San Diego, and in late '67,
Okay.
and then when I was in boot camp, I got pneumonia, and over the last couple of weeks of training, and I got pneumonia. So I went to the hospital there on the base, and for a couple of weeks, and when I got over that, um, got back into training, and this non-commissioned officer came by, and he said, "I'm looking for some volunteers for little extra training in what's called battalion recon, and you'll learn how a little more about uh, reading a map and a compass, a little extra demolition stuff." And I thought, that sounds pretty good. I think I'll do that. And I think that was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life,
Hmm.
because when I got to Vietnam, I was at China Beach,
Mhm.
and there we were all lined up there. We'd been there a few days to get acclimated.
Tell us what
And
China Beach was.
China Beach was a in-country R&R center,
Mhm.
uh, and a big base in North Vietnam. I mean, not North Viet, the
Mhm.
northern part of South Vietnam.
Mhm.
And just like the air temperature was 100 and the water was 90, and they had surfboards there, and tried to surf, and I couldn't keep any wax on the board, and there wasn't any waves anyway. But
Hmm.
so I don't know. Do you ever see that TV program, China Beach?
Yes, I was reminiscing too. Like that
Yeah,
goes back to the 1990s, I think, doesn't it?
yeah, that's China Beach. And so anyway, this officer says, "Where's those guys that just got a little extra recon training? Step forward." So I stepped forward, a few other guys, and he said, "Well, now you're in Force Recon, Force FORCE, and
Mhm.
it's the Marine Corps equivalent of the Green Berets, Special Forces." And I thought, wow, what does that mean? And
You didn't know you were that much of an overachiever.
no, I didn't know. And so what it meant was, instead of being in a platoon that went out, with like 50 guys or so, and you know, like assaulting a village or something, we went out in 6 to 8 man teams. Chopper would take us out into the hills, and the whole idea was we were looking for North Vietnamese soldiers coming down from the demilitarized zone, coming down. We
Mhm.
were looking for it's called snooping and pooping. And the good part was you were out there and you were not supposed to make contact. I mean, you were just looking around.
Mhm.
And several times we were going for a hike, a 5-day hike of 10, 15 miles. And we would see North Vietnamese soldiers with their green fatigues on, going
Mhm.
down into a village and then going back up,
Mhm.
calling in an airstrike. And so the downside to being in force recon was that if you made contact with a superior force, you're on your own. You're probably going to get either captured or just wiped out.
Mhm.
So after because I was taken into force recon legally, the Marine Corps had to train me to be a scuba diver and a parachutist, a jump qualified. So at 5 months, they sent me to the Philippines where I went to scuba school, and that was a great vacation. It's like warm water and scuba diving and
Well, I
nightclubs.
mean, it was already your lifestyle, right? I mean, it's what you'd got up in Pismo
Yeah,
Beach and
yeah, yeah. What was that TV show with Mike Nelson or uh, well, anyway, scuba diving. Yeah.
Mhm.
So went to scuba school, came back, and then on New Year's Eve, 1968, I was on patrol and got surrounded, and I volunteered to walk point about halfway through,
Mhm.
and it's like when you're coming off the back of the chopper, you're thinking when the chopper lands and you're walking point, you're thinking, well, this will either be successful or I'll be just shot dead before I hit the ground.
Mhm.
Uh, so anyway, uh, let's see, where was I? Oh yeah, so got surrounded out there on a patrol, and uh, uh, they had just set us in, and the chopper was still, like just like maybe 1 minute away. And what happens when you get set in? Usually, there'd be two jet fighters that would do what's called prep the zone, and they
Mhm.
drop 500-pound bombs here and there and everywhere to sort of like scatter anybody that was around. Well, also it signals here we are. So
Mhm.
I don't know how good that was, but anyway, the jets were still there, and we were surrounded. And they came back and they ran strafing runs as we crossed this river that was like chest high to get back to where we had started, and they dropped a little napalm here and there, and got back to where they had set us in a bomb crater. And a chopper came in. I mean, these guys are so brave. Here we're
Mhm.
taking fire all over the place, and the chopper comes back and he sets down. But he was about 50 yards away from our position, and we got out of the bomb crater and started running for the chopper. And on the way to the chopper is when I got shot in the leg.
Mm.
And I remember each team had a Navy corpsman with it, and got on the bird and started firing out of the window. And I put my hand down on my leg, and it didn't really hurt, uh, but there was blood on my hand. And I told the corpsman, I said, "Doc, I think I'm hit." And he said, "Lay down." So I laid down. And he cut my trousers and looked at it. He goes, "$1 million wound, Cossi." And I thought to myself, "Uh oh, bionic man, like
Mhm.
the $1 million man."
Mhm.
And and I said, "Oh no." And he goes, "This is going to get you out of here." And he was right, because I went to Da Nang uh, later that day and
Mhm.
they took the bullet out, and then they flew me to Japan,
Mhm.
and stayed there about 3 weeks. I had this like 9-inch open wound in my thigh because they were afraid if they close it up, it would get anaerobic and I'd lose my leg. So they kept having to pack it with gauze and keep it open. Uh, One thing I forgot was when we were surrounded. I might have mentioned this to you before, but I prayed to God that He would help me get out of this situation. And this was a God I didn't know. I just everybody. like they say, there's no atheists in a foxhole.
Right.
So I prayed, and so then I got home, and uh, I remember walking around with a smile on my face. For months. It's like you have no idea how lucky you are to be alive and not in a war zone. And so then I spent a couple of months in Santa Cruz surfing. Then my buddy got out, and we moved to Redding, California, and went to school on the GI Bill, Shasta Junior College.
Okay.
And
It's a beautiful area.
yeah, yeah, we used to drive up there from San Jose to play around in the snow on Mount Shasta, and uh, I had two loves in my early life: the beach and the mountains and fishing. I loved to go fishing up at Lake Tahoe and anywhere I could go fish. And so we went up to Shasta Junior College, and 230 a month on the GI Bill, and we rented a cabin right on the lake for 125 a month. So it's like $60 each.
Mm-hmm.
And some friends of mine had opened a health food store in Redding, and the first health food store in Redding. And so we found out.
Which had to be one of the very first health food stores in America or the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this was pioneer stuff. And
because Redding was cutting edge for all of that anyway, right?
yeah. Yeah. So we went and stayed with Jim a couple days, and he was a vegetarian, and he was into this spiritual thing called Path of the Masters. And
real quick before we
yeah,
leave your experience with the military, I'm curious, what were your relationships like with your fellow Marines, and did you feel kind of was it a band of brothers, or did you feel out of sorts and not quite right there?
it was absolutely a band of brothers. All we talked about was helping each other get back to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And one guy was from West Virginia, Polak. I can't remember his real name, but he was Polish.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to, when he went home, he wanted to raise cattle. And he said, I'm not very good at math, but how about you? And I said, yeah, okay. And he said, well, can you help me figure out, like, if I started off with one bull and two heifers or whatever, how long would it take me? And so we'd sit down and figure out, how many calves and how much that would cost and that kind of stuff. And yeah, there was some tension between the blacks and the whites. And like, for instance, there was another guy in my 10-man unit that he was from, I don't know, some southern state, and we got a man in our team who was black, and he was either a corporal or a sergeant. And he said something to this lance corporal or PFC, whatever he was, and the guy from the south said, "I don't take orders from niggers." And next thing you know, they're fist fighting. And so then that had to be straightened out. But there was always this tension. It was very uncomfortable, and it made you think that something really bad could happen. And but there really wasn't that many black people in my group, so it wasn't too big of a problem.
Well, especially in the 1960s, the late 60s. There was the civil rights movement.
Right.
Black folks were finally asserting themselves once and for all.
Yeah.
In the society, and America had, well, and then there was the Civil Rights Act before all that, and so it that forced the issue. And so
there's
emotions take a while to catch up.
Yeah, there was some growing pains there for sure.
Sure.
And like, I remember before I got shot, but on that same patrol, I was walking point, and I was we were spread out, maybe 20 feet behind each other, and I was going through this tall grass, and I could see there was a clearing up ahead, and as I spread the grass, I realized there was a road right in front of me that was covered by the trees. You couldn't see it from the top, but here's this road. And right then, somebody opened fire on me, the enemy.
Mhm.
And when I saw the road, I clicked my rifle from safety onto fully automatic. And when this guy shot at me, I squirted off a burst of bullets, and I hit the deck. And my backup point was this big, tall guy from Ireland, and he said, "Rick, are you okay?" And I said, "I can't move." And what I meant was I was exposed, on the road.
Mm.
I was laying there exposed, and he said, "I'm coming to get you."
Mhm.
And he ran up and grabbed me by the legs and pulled me back, and then we regrouped, and that's when we got extracted, got pulled out. But that's the kind of heroism. I mean, you're there for each other.
Right.
It's totally solid. And one of the hardest things for me was when I got medevaced out of the bush, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to my friends,
Mm.
to get their name and address or any of that. It was just like, gone. And but when a replica of the wall came to Eugene, Oregon,
Mhm.
I tried to remember as best I could the names of all my friends, and I went there and I didn't see any of their names.
Mm.
So, that was really a blessing.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
yeah.
So, okay, so then we'll talk more about your reentry into society. So you're back, you go to your Ready junior college,
Yeah. And
community college. Yeah.
yeah, junior college, that's where the spiritual stuff really got going.
Okay.
I had, I had long hair. I was a hippie, and uh, it seemed like all of my friends were interested in spirituality, like transcendental meditation,
Mhm.
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. People were paying their $50 and getting a mantra.
So this is 1970, 1969, give or take.
69, 70, early 70s. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very early 70s. And yeah,
Well,
I
in
call
Northern
it,
California, you would have been exposed to Alan Watts. Would have been up there quite a bit. Did you do any of his live seminars, or was it all through what would have been cassette books? Okay.
yeah, books. I was, really into getting books, all the ones I could afford.
Okay.
So people around me were like Paramahansa Yogananda's books,
Sure.
Autobiography of a Yogi,
Right.
Ram Dass. Everybody had a copy of Be Here Now,
Right.
laying on their coffee table, and books like Alan Watts on Buddhism, D.T. Suzuki.
Right.
And I also picked up Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, but when I started reading it, I realized this isn't how to meditate. This is something different, and I didn't read it.
Okay.
And then when I saw, what's her name?
Sevilla.
Sevilla, yeah. I thought, oh, I should read that.
Yeah, she's really into it. Did you go back and read it?
I did. I went back and read it.
What'd you think of it? What'd you think of it? Now,
I really enjoyed it. Although when it came to like how to repair the motorcycle, I skipped over it.
mm-hmm.
I found that boring. But the travel, this is my country, the Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole travel was interesting. His emphasis on the word quality kind of threw me off. It's like, why not just call it truth, beauty, and goodness like regular philosophers? But quality is okay. I picked up Lila, and I actually enjoyed that more. It was a little racier. I don't know if you've read Lila.
No, I'm not familiar with that at all.
Yeah, that's kind of his second book after Motorcycle.
Okay.
And then when I read about how his son was accosted and killed in San Francisco, I just put a whole new take on him and everything. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
oh yeah, and then there was more books. Herman Hesse,
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Siddhartha,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my other favorites of his, The Glass Bead Game.
Mm-hmm.
And so then my friend Jim, the health food guy,
Out of any of those, was there any one you clung to, or was it just a collection that, I mean, are any standouts?
well, yeah, the one that my friend Jim was in, The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East and The Path of the Masters by Kirpal Singh, really struck me. It's like this was, besides Paramahansa Yogananda, but I was getting this whole vision of Eastern religion, and it
Mm-hmm.
was very enchanted me very much. I felt like, man, I would love to, you know, go to India and meditate and just like these guys. And so this is
And
what I
funny
had.
thing is back in your day and back then, it was a road trip, not more often than an airplane flight. There's a lot of I've heard several stories from um, the people who went to India in the late 60s and early 70s, and they started their trek in Europe and went through Turkey, and it was a road trip through Iran and Iraq. I mean, these days you can never do that.
Yeah,
But uh,
yeah,
that's just wild because they were, I guess, well, air travel was much more expensive back
yeah,
then. That's
yeah,
kind of for the rich, and so for these young hippies, it was actually cheaper to
yeah,
hitchhike and road trip their way across these countries, and that they could even do it safely is amazing to me. But they did it.
yeah, yeah. Uh, when I lived in Maui from '90 to 2000, I met a German guy that was really a really good drummer, like tabla.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling me how he and his friend made a road trip from Germany to North Africa, where they,
It's very funny in the in this little corner, the community amongst younger people. The so-called boomers take quite the beating,
yeah,
and I don't think there's enough respect given to how courageous you all were, both to endure, whether you are on either side of the Vietnam question, on either side of the civil rights question, even wherever you landed, but you went through all that trauma and then went on to your various explorations, many of you anyway, and you did it with a tremendous amount of courage. And I don't think that's respected enough. And I dare anybody. I'm planning a road trip right now from Chicago to Northern California in a couple of weeks, and I'm stressing out over just the winter weather. I'm not
yeah,
crossing boundaries. I'm not going through potential war zones or underdeveloped societies and worrying about what kind of water I'm going to drink and how many parasites I'm going to have to deal with and whatever else. And then, but they did it, and they did it with about always knowing what their next step was going to be. Now, there's obviously a difference between courage and youthful foolhardiness, but still, I think you guys deserve some serious credit for your courage
yeah. Thank you.
and for your willingness to explore outside your cultural norms.
Thank you. Yeah, that seemed to be. It seemed to just be in the air. People wanted to learn about Buddhism and Hinduism, and it was exotic, and people were kind of getting tired of the sort of strict church kind of religion, which seemed kind of hypocritical to a lot of us.
Right.
It was more about what you were wearing to church on Sunday than, at least that's the way it looked from the outside. Uh, so I was my friend Jim loaned me a couple of books on the Path of the Masters, and I was living with my buddy up on Lake Shasta, and I had gone to bed, and I was laying there, and I felt myself float up to the ceiling of the bedroom.
Hmm.
And I looked down at the room. I didn't really see my body. I was up there, and it scared me. And I called my friend Ernie. He was still up, and I said, Ernie, come here. And he came to the door, and he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Do you see me on the bed, or am I on the ceiling?" And he said, "You're on the bed." I said, "Well, I'm up here on the I'm up here on the ceiling." And he said, "Well, just go for it." And at that moment, I thought, I don't know, I just all the fear left me, and I thought, yeah. And suddenly, I shot off into dark space with all these stars. It was just like Star Wars going through space.
Hmm.
And I had at least one angel, maybe two, one on each side, taking me somewhere, traveling through space. And after a little while, it looked like we were landing on this planet, and it looked like skyscrapers, all lit up. These big, tall skyscrapers. And we came in for a landing, and the closer we got, I realized they were these huge, glowing beings. And I looked, and it was my grandmother and my grandfather
Hmm.
who had passed away, and it seemed like in the middle was Jesus.
Hmm.
And they said, "Rick, we just wanted to show you this, that everything is okay, that we're being loved. There's just love here, and uh, when you get back, share this with anyone who's willing to listen."
Okay.
And so then
How
all I
old were
knew
you
was
roughly now?
I was about 19 or 20. I
Okay,
was
so
probably 20.
20.
Yeah.
And any idea what you might have been on, or was this just a natural vision through you reading and
Just I see it as a synchronicity,
okay.
because I was reading stuff about masters of the Far East traveling to different levels. I
And
think that might have
you were just
that.
in a zone. You weren't
Yeah, I
you
wasn't
weren't on
high.
any chemicals, no
No
chemicals.
chemicals, no.
Okay. Very cool.
And yeah, and so I mean, I'll never forget it. It totally validated the whole spiritual idea that I was becoming interested in.
Now, have you exposed yourself to any of Paul Vanderklay's um, work on those who flew, or the book? I cannot remember the exact title. It's They Flew, or
They flew.
They Flew.
I remember that coming up like 6 months ago or something.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a while, but it seems to be a theme in your story. A couple times you've flown already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I haven't read that, but I'm totally. I mean, my whole life I've have an understanding that there's things going on that we can't see
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes, levels of spiritual beings that are helping us, angels. Uh, I think I've mentioned to you before, I don't believe in demons. Uh, but so the idea that there's uh, telepathy, God speaking to us, God within us, uh, all of that stuff is real for me. So after that experience, I woke up in the morning and I called Ernie in and I said, "Was I? Did I call you in the room? And did you see me on the roof? I mean, on the ceiling and stuff?" And he said, "Yeah." I told him what happened, and he wasn't very impressed. I think he thought I was dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So then I discovered the Urantia book. This
Okay.
this book right this book right here.
Oh my. Okay. Spell that for us. What's it called?
Urantia, Urantia, which is supposedly the name of this planet. And this thing just swept me off my feet. It's it, it it claims that it's a revelation, kind of like Joseph Smith and the Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
And
That is new to me. What? Who's the author, or is it anonymous?
anonymous,
Okay.
yeah, anonymous. But it was put together by a psychologist from the University of Chicago, Sadler. I forget his first name, and he he had some client. He had a besides being a professor and having a private practice, he had an interest in debunking psychic phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
So he would look into these different cases and try to figure out an explanation for them that was more materialistic, scientific. And then this client of his would go to sleep and start talking like
Mm-hmm.
somebody was talking through him. And over a course of like 20 years, they put this book together. And it's all about the entire universe of universes. The Isle of Paradise at the center of the creation, and then the universes that revolve around it, different levels, different planets, and it claims this should. When I look back on it, it's almost embarrassing that I believed this, but it was so. I guess I was young and naive, and uh, uh, later on, like 10 years ago, I talked to a friend, a spiritual mentor of mine, and I said, I don't know what to think of the Urantia book, and she said, "Well, Rick, everything's got some truth in it." Mm-hmm. And some are better than others. But so I spent years reading this thing and trying to digest it. And the first part is very dense philosophy, like the absolute and the supreme being, the paradise sons of God, the ascending sons of God, the descending sons of God, the Melchizedeks, the Verondadeks, the life carriers. It's like, and when it came out on tape, I got the whole set. And at the junior college there, I got interested in ceramics, and I started. The first class I took is like it came easy to me. I started making pottery, and next thing you know, I was selling at an art fair or Saturday market in Chico and Reading, and I'm like, I can make a living doing this, and that's what I did. I made a living for about 20 years as a potter.
Wow.
And in Reading, and starting off as a potter, all of my friends were like leather workers, jewelers, uh, uh, macrame,
Mm-hmm.
candle makers, and we all wanted to go back to the land, and so that's what we did.
Okay.
We that's back when you could buy a piece of property for $40,000 or $50,000,
Mm-hmm.
and the first kiln I ever used was a wood-fired kiln. I found
Wow.
I found a cedar shake mill down the road that had tons of scraps, that just had big piles of scraps. And I asked him if I could take some of their cedar, which was like perfect. I mean, that stuff went up like, bam, it catches on fire. And so I built a catenary arch kiln, self-supporting kiln. And they actually came down to my property a couple miles away and dumped cedar in my yard. And that worked good until it started raining. Then I switched to diesel.
It must have smelled amazing in comparison to the diesel too. Burning cedar.
Oh yeah, it was nice. It was nice. A lot of work, but I was, I was a purist. I wanted to dig my own clay and make my own glazes.
So 20 years of a professional potter.
Professional potter, yeah.
Or ceramic artist, or what would you?
I call myself a potter, but
Okay.
I think there's kind of a gray area between art and craft. I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of people go, "Oh, I'm a painter, I'm an artist," and I'm like, "Yeah, you mix your own paints?" It's like, no, okay, well, there's a lot of craft in art
Sure.
and vice versa. So I'm told I remember I was at a party one time and a guy asked me about my life and told him about Vietnam. He said, "What are you doing now?" I said, "I'm a potter." And he said, "Well, that makes sense. You were exposed to all this destruction. Now you're into creativity."
Hmm.
And I'll never forget that. And so, yeah, it was the beauty of being a potter. I got married and had 2 kids, uh, when I was about 22, and, they're, like, in their early 50s now,
Mhm. Okay.
Sarah and Josh, and, we lived out in the country and, made pottery. I had 2 acres that, I bought on the GI Bill. It had an old shop building on it that I turned into a house, and, the we were living in Eugene, Oregon, which has the University of Oregon. So I went there for a year. I wanted to finish my degree, but I didn't like their program. They were more into artsy fartsy, and I wanted to make usable, functional pottery. So I quit and just started making pottery. And they had a really strong Saturday market there, and you know, you could make a couple $100, $300 every weekend, and that was enough to make a living in those days.
Wow. And then so you have a couple kids. Does that mean you have or had a wife?
Yeah, I got married at the junior college.
Okay.
Yeah, I was taking a math class, and this lady who became my wife, we met in the math class, and then I offered to help her with her homework. So, yeah, then she got pregnant, and we got married, and it was interesting because she wasn't into all the spiritual stuff,
Mhm.
and for some reason, my personality is like I always want somebody to do something with me.
Mhm.
And because she wasn't that interested, my interest in like meditating an hour a day kind of thing and
Mhm.
being a vegetarian kind of dropped off.
Hmm.
And in retrospect, I think I got married too young and I didn't really know who I was, in sort of a way. Um, but I also realized about the being a guru or getting deep into Eastern spirituality. It's like the way I was raised, my culture. I realized that would be too hard for me. I just I don't think I could do it. You know, I know you've gotten deep into the Tibetan Buddhism, and uh, it's like since I had since I had a child and I needed to make a living, I started focusing more on making a living and
Sure.
less on being going to India or something.
Well, there
But I have
yeah. There are a lot of limitations on what a householder can do with these things. Yeah, and I run into that same problem. It's um these traditions. That's where Christianity has a bit of a advantage. There, you can um you don't have to be a monastic um or sadhu or something and go on 3-year retreats or something in isolation to fully explore the path. Christianity is it's more embedded into the day to day with family and home, and the ethical is bound very tightly, in my experience, anyways, very tightly with the practice. Whereas it's a little different from the Eastern Indian perspective, particularly.
yeah. On the other hand, I can see that as kind of a detriment in Christianity. It's kind of like they've lost that whole section.
Yeah, because that's what well, I think there's some people trying to bring back the Desert Fathers and at least wish them back here in the corner. And they're, who knows? And there's a lot of talk about intentional communities and this sort of thing. Um, I don't. I shouldn't let my skepticism quench the spirit. If it happens, it happens. It'll be interesting to see how it manifests. We just, my, our Western, we Westerners like convenience an awful lot.
Right. That's what I realized about myself. Yeah. Uh, yeah. That's why that's one of the things I like about Eastern Orthodox is the idea of theosis, and they've retained the notion of like going deep,
Mm-hmm.
going deep into their spirituality, and I think a lot of cultural Christianity, modern Christianity, is really quite shallow. Not that there aren't really nice people, good people, ethical, service-oriented people, but their understanding of what they believe is really limited, in my opinion.
The Well, that's where I think why I'm going back and at least touching base with some of the Tibetan material now is in response to some of the metaphysical uh, dialogues happening in the corner from a Christian perspective that I mean, these people go into such rich, voluminous detail
Yeah,
on their metaphysics that it's overwhelming, and it does challenge um, the metaphysics of most Christians. They just aren't prepared for it. I'm going through this material. I've been through it before, in some ways very deeply, in other ways not so. And I'm going through it again. I'm still overwhelmed by it. I'm hitting it, and it's like it is just it's both it's it's like swimming in very deep ocean water, and there are currents moving that you can get sucked in this way and then that way and pulled down and pushed up, and it's a bit unnerving, but at the same time there's it's unnerving because there is depth.
absolutely. I think we have built-in depth meters that attract us to deep spiritual ideas and processes. And like I was listening to Paul Kingsnorth the other day, talking to Jonathan Peugeot about Christian mysticism, and that's what I'm all for. Christian mysticism. I think it's there's a mystical path in Christianity. Like for probably 20 years, I've been studying centering prayer that Father Keating developed, and then Cynthia Bourgeot. And I use centering prayer as part of my prayer and meditation practice. And I also use Zen Buddhism as part of my prayer and meditation practice, which I learned on Maui from Roshi Aitken, taking the path of Zen. And I was surprised at how simple his teaching was. Zen is all about meditating. That's what Zen means. It means meditate. I mean, in a way. And he taught us to count 1 to 10 with our breath in and out, and then do it, and then over and over, 1 to 10, 1 to 10, and sort of become a witness to your monkey mind. And I still use that. So I'm a big proponent of broadening, if you're a Christian, of broadening your perspective beyond your ethnocentric place in life. Open your heart and mind to some of the deep practices that are available in Native American spirituality, Hindu spirituality, Buddhism, Uh, I practiced dances of universal peace when I was in Maui. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
Yeah,
I had to think
it,
for a second, but I don't think so.
it's sort of a spin off from Sufi dancing,
Okay.
the Sufi mysticism. And in dances of universal peace, you get like 20 people in a room and you pair off, and then there's a guitar and a tabla,
Mm-hmm.
and you face each other, and there's some words to a real simple song, like I praise the divine being in you, and you bow to each other, and then maybe you embrace, and then you spin around and go to the next person. I call it a living prayer, a moving prayer,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just beautiful. And sometimes I watch your branding with the people in the church, the Pentecostal
Mm-hmm.
church, and I'm like, I like that kind of stuff. It's just
Mm-hmm.
what I don't like is the theology behind it.
Oh yes, the theology. I don't know if there is much theology behind it. To tell you the truth, it's when it's at its best, I think it's not thought about too much. It's people just letting themselves go, and
Yeah,
their both their love for God and their compassion for each other get expressed in this very strange uh, way. And if they're maybe perhaps they are letting the Holy Ghost take them over a bit, and they just flow with it. Um,
yeah,
any attempts to explain it, I think, do it a disservice.
right. It's a connection. Yeah, and then the what's called zikr or dicker, where you're getting a group of this is a Islamic Sufi based practice where you get in a circle of people and you just repeat Allah, 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 God, God,
Mm-hmm.
God,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
for like a half an hour, and pretty soon you're just like you're floating.
Yes, that reminds me of the story about Ram Dass's guru. They called him Maharaji, but his for some reason his name is escaping me at the moment. But he had a notebook that he wrote in every day, and when he died, they pulled out his notebook to look at it, and it said all it had was written down was Ram, 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 which is God, 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 God.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so
So you okay? So you
had the kids, moved
had
to
the
UK.
kids. You were married. Stayed married or divorced or
Well, I
lost?
stayed married for 18 years and then got divorced.
Okay.
So I guess got divorced when I was 40. And by then, my daughter was just graduating high school and my son was a freshman. And uh, I trying to be a potter as the economy got harder and harder. Inflation, cost of living got to be more and more, and I was hanging
Mm-hmm.
on, trying to do it. There's no you don't know from one year to the next or one month to the next how much money you're going to make.
Mm-hmm.
You might get in an art show one year, and the next year you don't get in, and so that created a lot of tension. And I wanted to move back to California. I really missed the warmth. I wanted to move, and my wife had family up here in Oregon, and she didn't want to move. And uh, the guy I went to Vietnam into the Marine Corps with. He also became a potter. Excuse me, but he moved back east, and after the propane burner blew up in his face the first year he was doing pottery, he decided to get out of it, and he went to work for the post office. And we'd compare notes. You know, he'd say, "How's the pottery going?" I'd tell him, and he said, you know, all you have to do is go down there and take the test, and you'll go to the top of the list if you're a veteran. And I said, yeah, I don't know. And eventually I thought, maybe that's a good idea. So uh, about 2 years before we got divorced, I went to work for the post office, and it was really nice to have a steady paycheck. Unfortunately, I wanted to be a letter carrier because I loved the exercise, but all that was available was a mail handler. So I did that, and as a consequence, mail handlers work swing shift from like 4 to midnight, or from midnight
Right.
to 8 in the morning. And I did that, and I switched back and forth, and both of those were really hard on the family.
Sure.
It's like kids would be coming home from school, I'd be going to work, and then the whole
Right.
evening I'd be gone, or else I'd be, well, you know what it's like. And so that created division in family life. And then one day my wife said, you want to move to California, you should just go ahead and do that. And this chapter's over, and she wanted a divorce, and so I didn't really. There's nothing I could do.
Right.
And so that happened, and I was still at the post office, and I thought, well, I'm going to go back to the university. I've got 1 year left, so I did that. And instead of majoring in ceramics, like I had been, I changed to art education. I thought, okay, I can get a degree, and I can be certified to teach K through 12, and that's what I did. And did my student teaching, and I really enjoyed the art education. Like uh, uh, what's her name? The Meaning Code, Karen Wong. She always talks about the elements and principles of design. It's like I know those like the back of my head. They're standard
Sure.
art education things that you learn and teach. And so I got out. I graduated from the university, and I quit the post office. And a friend of mine had told me about Maui and how wonderful Maui was, and that I could probably do my pottery over there and the surf and everything. And so I I had $800 and a 10-speed bike, and I loaded up that bike and moved to Maui,
Wow.
and lived on the beach.
How old were you
That
then?
was 40,
Okay.
because I was married when I was 22, and 18 years of marriage, so I was 40 years old.
Okay, so this is before you finished your education in art. Art.
I had just finished at the university.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So a lot's happening at the same time, it sounds like.
Yeah, I just finished, and I thought, I had, instead of going to California, my friend says you should go to Maui, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds really good. And so I remember telling people for 3 or 4 years I'd really love to move to Maui, and they said, oh, my ex-wife, she said, you'll never do that. I said, yes, I will. And big dreamers. Like I've always been a dreamer. I'd be dreaming about how to reform education, and she'd say, "Why don't you go out and fix the fence? Quit dreaming." And anyway, I landed in Maui and spent about a month on the beach, and then in Paia, little town in Paia. Have you been to Maui?
No.
Yeah, it's great. And after a while, I got a job at this activity center at Cruiser Bob's in Paia. And what he did is he'd take one van full of bicycles and the other van full of passengers up to the top of Haleakala Crater. And then you'd unload the bikes, watch the sunrise, and then coast all the way down 30 miles, all the way down, and stop halfway and have lunch, all the way back down to Paia, which is on the beach.
Wow.
So, and a lot of tourists would say, this is the best activity that we've done. They really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, there's a community art center halfway, 10 miles up the crater called the Hui No Iao, a gathering of hands. And I went up there and started making pottery up there. And after about 6 months or so, I had enough pottery that I could go to Lahaina and sell my pottery under the banyan tree, which got totally destroyed in the Lahaina fire, although the tree is still alive. And that was really fabulous. I mean, the climate was so good for making pottery. You're just out there in your shorts and making pottery all day and going down and having a surf in the afternoon. And, you know, all these
You were living your best life at 40.
living my best life. Yeah. And all these girls in bikinis. It was fun. Yeah.
The goddess is manifesting every hour.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and, you know, I'd make $500 a day under the banyan tree Saturday and Sunday. I mean, I was just selling raku pottery like hotcakes.
How long did that period last in your life?
Well, that lasted 10 years.
My goodness.
Yeah, from 90 to 2000. And I found a Urantia book study group while I was there. And so all this time, the Urantia book is, how can I say it? It honors all spiritual paths. And it talks extensively about Buddhism, Confucianism, ancient prehistoric religions, and talks about the evolution of religion on mankind. So I was always, because the Urantia book was always my kind of Bible, my go-to, I've always been open to any kind of spiritual path and see what I could learn there and try it out. But I always, the Urantia book was my main thing. And so I'd get together with people, like, I think it was once every 2 weeks, and we'd read the book. The problem with the Urantia book is there's several problems. Number one was there's no organized structure. It's like in Chicago, they published the book, that's it. And then they had this, so that's the Urantia Foundation. They published the book. Then there was the Urantia Brotherhood, and that was a group of people. And what they did was they coordinated, like, okay, there's a study group in your town, or there's a study group over here, but there's no church, no hierarchy, no, it's kind of like what I would feel is like the blind leading the blind. So we'd sit there and we'd read the book, and people would have all these different opinions about what it meant. And and then on top of that, I was like thrilled. It's like, you got to read this thing, man. This is it. It's like they've landed, the spiritual beings it's all in here. Hardly anybody was interested. It's like so many times I tried to interest people in the Urantia book. And it's like they say about TLC, the on-ramp is too hard. And so, anyway, I met my current wife at the Community Art Center. She was doing some pottery, and she was a manager for the farmers market, and we've been together about 20 years.
Okay.
And she helped me in the pottery for a while, and because I was making so many pots and needed help, and she had some time. And she's always been interested in helping animals. So she was a volunteer for East Maui Animal Refuge that had a lot of animals that showed up there. And she still does that kind of work.
Now, how did you... Sorry, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, rescuing dogs and cats
Okay.
from the pound or from, the neighborhood.
So how did you end up back in the Northwest?
Yeah, so after a couple of years that Diana and I were together, even though it seemed like I was making a decent amount of money at the pottery, we were renting, and every once in a while the owner would say, hey, I want to use this myself. You need to move. And we were looking at the situation. It's like, we're never going to be able to afford to buy a place here. Too expensive. And then also, what came up for me was my kids on the mainland, my parents on the mainland, and I went back probably 3 times, and every time I did, it cost me like $3,000 or $4,000 with, you know, and a lot of people that live on, there's a lot of people with money that live on Maui, and they could afford to come and go. Like they'd go over there and go skiing in the winter, and but if you're kind of poor or lower middle class, you're kind of stuck. So we both decided that, hey, this scraping out a living doing pottery is getting hard, and we're not going to be able to afford a place. So let's move back to the mainland where we can get real jobs, which is kind of a joke. And, and we, since I was from Eugene, she had lived in Eugene for a while, but she's actually Canadian. She's from British Columbia.
Okay.
But she had also lived in San Diego for a while. But we said, let's go back to Eugene. So we came back to Eugene, and we saw these. There was a chip making computer chips. There was a chip plant. We thought, oh, get a job there. And then it turns out you got to wear this spacesuit, and not only that, but by then I was 50, and I found that there was even at age 50 there was age discrimination.
Sure.
And here you got all these graduates out of university, and it's like people wanted to stay in Oregon, stay in Eugene, because you got the coast and you got the mountains 50 miles away. You can go skiing. It's like, but you can't live on the scenery, right? But there's all these people looking for work, and I ended up doing pottery again. And Diana opened a animal rescue. She started a nonprofit and opened a thrift shop to fund it, and it was really successful. It's amazing. People donate. People love animals. They donate clothing and all kinds of stuff, and she would sell them. She had a staff, and they would sell the items, and then she would go to the pound, the dog pound, animal shelter, a couple times a week. And after 3 days, the animal's going to get put down, and she'd grab those animals, take them to no-kill shelters in Portland.
Okay.
And she did that for, I don't know, excuse me, maybe 5 years. And I thought I'd go back to school and get a master's degree in religious studies. So I started doing that, and after a while, like after maybe one or two quarters, I thought, man, it's gotten so expensive. Education is so expensive that I'm gonna, I was like, I was 50, 52. I thought, man, I'm gonna be like retirement age by the time I get done here. So I gave up on the idea of getting a master's degree. But so then I basically deconstructed from the Urantia book. I decided that I just didn't believe that it was what it claimed it was, and I kind of became agnostic for about 5 years. And excuse me. Because I had this feeling like I had given myself to this teaching so completely, I started thinking maybe this is just a mental hobby in my mind. I don't know if this is real. It's not like I was an atheist, but I just didn't know. I had to sort of clear the decks. And so I did that. But in the meantime, I always kept reading books. And are you familiar with Karen Armstrong? Yeah. One time I've got a lot of her books on, like I can't remember the names of them all, but she was a nun, and then she became an author. And one time I saw an interview, and the interviewer asked her, when do you feel closest to God, or when have you ever felt closest to God? And I was waiting for the answer, and she said, in a book. And I thought, in a book, that's where I found God, except for in the foxhole. And so, yeah, books are really have continued to be so incredibly important and gateways to the spiritual in my life. And so I kept reading, and Matthew Fox. I don't know if you know Matthew Fox. Original blessing rather than original sin. So I don't believe in original sin. I've got all these fringe beliefs. Since I don't believe in original sin, I don't believe in the atonement. And I, so I continue to read, and I really enjoy reading theology and church history, sociology of religion, like what life was like when Jesus was walking around in Galilee, and stuff like that. And by letting go of the Urantia book, I was able to open my mind to a lot of other theology. One of the important books that sort of brought me back to Christianity, and the Urantia book is Judeo-Christian, was Hans Kung. Does God exist? Hans Kung was a Catholic theologian, and so I started becoming interested in Christianity as regular Christianity, and then I had some friends that were involved in New Thought. Do you know what New Thought is?
Refresh my memory. It's a word that was once part of my vocabulary, but I can't explain it very well.
The current models of it are unity, and science of mind. Unity was, and it's all downstream of Christianity. New Thought basically began with Ralph Waldo Emerson and the Transcendentalists.
Right.
And it's kind of like taking the red letter edition, like the teachings of Jesus, and focusing on the affirmations, focusing on the good stuff. And unity was organized and started by Myrtle Fillmore and her husband, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, and it's all really about healing prayer, and focuses on like one of their main sayings is, "As you think, so you are."
Right.
So positive thinking. What's his name? Robert Schuller, Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. That's all New Thought. And I found out a very practical spirituality. I was reading Science of Mind is Ernest Holmes, and the Science of Mind is like human beings have a lot of negative thoughts because of our evolutionary past. We're always worried about something or other. So one of the so I started studying it. I was going to become a practitioner, and I did a lot of online classes in Science of Mind. And one of the things we did was kept a journal. Every 30 minutes, you wrote in your journal. You picked a day, and every 30 minutes, you wrote in your journal how many negative thoughts you've had, if any, during that last 30 minutes. And it turns out that we have a lot of fears and negative thoughts all the time in our life. We're worried about the future, worried about the past,
Sure.
worried. And so the practice.
That's why we're so depressed.
Exactly.
As a population.
Yeah. So the remedy is think good thoughts. Get up in the morning and say, "Man, it's a miracle I'm alive. I'm so, I can do whatever I want." And there's a positive aspect.
I would challenge. I think there's this isn't really a philosophical discussion. It's really more about you. But just on that one point, if I may push back gently, I
Sure.
think as a person who's applied much of what you're talking about to deal with depression, um, I think that has its limits, because there comes a point in life, if you live long enough, where you can't do everything, and not waking up every morning is not always the most pleasant experience. Um, I so there's a I think there's a step beyond, in this practice where you, um, yes, it's we are our thoughts do construct our reality, um, at least our experience of reality, but there is also a way to not own. I don't push away the negative thoughts any more than I try to cling to the positive ones. It's best to you just learn to be with the moment and experience it both in its positivity and in its negativity. And it's a there's a very it's a kind of gentle way of holding your mind, not letting it rule you with its sort of whimsical impulses, positive or negative. And you can actually find joy. You can find joy in the sorrows, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's a practice, though. It's doesn't come easily, but it is a practice, and I think it is a way to, because I'm watching, like, for example, um, I'm around a lot of old people with dementia, uh, and um, so much of their struggle is the anxiety over what's lost and what is being lost, of life as it used to be and isn't no more. And it creates they go into real hysterias in moment, and they don't have they with the dementia they lose the emotional maturity to manage their emotions. So it's just raw and naked reaction to loss, and along with all the fear and anxiety of what else is to come, or and the confusion and everything else. And um, I don't know if there's a way. I doubt it. I am, but I don't know if one can practice to a point where you could even survive dementia, because I mean it's actual brain damage. That's why we end up in dementia. So, but between here and there, anyway, there is a way to not be. That you just take it as it comes. It's if does any of that resonate, or
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's clear that our mind affects our body. You know, if I mean, people die from a broken heart. You know, if you're depressed all the time, your body secretes cortisone hormones. That I mean, it's clear that there's a connection. And the way this whole positive thinking got started was like back when, like in the early 1900s, when people had what's that lung disease? Anyway, it's like people would say this is incurable. You can't cure this. And then so it's like if the doctor tells you you've got this incurable thing, then you're like, okay, I've got it. I'm gonna die. Uh, so the idea is to like turn to God and say, I have a miracle, a body that's a miracle, and it can heal if I allow it to heal, and I'm not afraid. Fear not. The downside is people start thinking that they can manifest like a Ferrari in the driveway, like just thinking about it. It's like the secret,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of spiritual bypass, and people are going, well, I've been saying these affirmative prayers and it's not working, and why is that? And so I deconstructed from the new thought.
Mm,
uh, it's like, okay, if you want to learn how to play the piano, you have to think to yourself, I can do this. I mean, it's just common sense. If you think you can't do it, you'll never even try.
right.
So it's just common sense. But when you take it and multiply it out to its extreme, then you end up with extreme examples. Like you're saying, that it turns out that the real path is equanimity.
There you go.
To find the middle path, to realize, okay, I'm afraid. Like today, I'm like, you know, I'm telling myself I'm not nervous, you know, and that helps a little bit. But it's like, okay, I'm a little bit nervous, and so yeah, there's definitely a downside to it, and New Thought doesn't pay enough attention to suffering. Oh, and also they have this idea that there's no accidents. So if you get mugged in the parking lot, it's like, what did you do to cause that?
Right. What did I do to manifest that? Yeah.
Manifest that. It's like, that doesn't work.
Yeah. No,
So
yeah, it's the kind of shallow new ageism that gets satirized.
yeah,
Uh, for good reason. Yeah, it's a poor understanding of karma
yeah,
and meanwhile, the people who invented these ideas, their culture, they've I don't think they get thrown in with that, and it's unfortunate because I think a lot of Indian philosophy, while they do take seriously karma, they don't think that shallow layer or shallow approach. Well, Americans are very transactional. Westerners in general are very transactional. So we're always thinking about, we see cause and effect in a very individualistic, personal, and immediate way. It's, what can I do now to get what I want now, as opposed to what I am now is the product of a lifetime of choices and the lifetimes before me, before this incarnation, and if you can grok it, the lifetimes that this awareness, this field of awareness, this subtle body has endured. If you can handle any of that, that's fine. If you don't throw it all away if you can't handle that. But at the very least, you can understand that you are what you have chosen to be over the last of your 20, 30, 60, 70 years, as well as the choices your parents made. At the very least, this is who you are, and you're not just what you choose to be here and now.
yeah, yeah.
That's real karma. That's karma.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree totally. Uh, my father died of Alzheimer's. So, for the last, I remember 3 years before he died, I came down from Oregon to San Jose to visit him, and he didn't know who I was. And, I started crying right there in the door.
Sure.
It's like, because I'm like, okay, he's gone,
Yeah.
Now I'm experiencing that. He didn't even want me to stay in the house. It's like, I've got nowhere else to stay, and yeah, he was the only good the only good side of Alzheimer's is they don't know how screwed up they are. Uh,
Yeah, it's horrible. It's, well, one our the person um who helped us buy a house um told us about her mother. Decided one day she had, no one knew how bad off she was, apparently, in the family, but she decided she was heading off to, she's going to go on a trip to New York City, and she lived in Minneapolis or something like that. And she headed out the door, all packed and ready to go. Only is the door she opened was the door to her basement. instead of the door outside, and she went straight down the stairs and died an unusually quick death for someone with Alzheimer's. But that's how she died, because she thought that door was the door out of the house, and didn't see or comprehend that there was a straight old staircase going down. Just that's that disease. That's just it's always a and it's a yeah. Sorry for the dark anecdote there, folks. That's
Yeah, it's hard. Uh,
sorry, my dogs are going crazy here. We've been out now for an hour and a half. We could probably do another hour and a half, Rick. You want to? We either come back for a part 2, or just we could put it. Why would you close the last? Take 5 minutes to kind of wrap it up.
I think I could wrap it up by saying that the internet and YouTube has become another university for me, and especially this little corner. And it's actually getting hard to keep up with all the corners. But I love I love trying to be a part of it. I don't know if it's going to work out, because my ideas are kind of fringe. But I plan on jumping on some of your live streams about Buddhism. I listened to your first installment of the Bardo Todo, which I really enjoyed. And are you going to do another one today?
Today is going to be House of Wu with Ron Copperman, and
Okay.
And then I will be doing. I'm just. It's so much material to go through.
Yeah.
I'm just going to live stream it at every possible opportunity as they arise. So I don't even have a schedule, because it's gonna. I don't know. It's gonna be a year, maybe 2 years of going through this. Sorry, maybe the AI will clear out this audio, because my dogs are going absolutely crazy over here.
Yeah. So.
But anyway, yeah, we'll do it, and we'll do it. If you want, I can try to send you. I'll just text you when I'm going live, and if you're available, hop on. Yeah, and right now we're only a few paragraphs into the Dalai Lama's introduction to it, which is a really, really good essay. It's an excellent essay. And there's also another introduction. He did the introduction to Robert Thurman's translation that's also very good, and it's very different. And then there's Robert Thurman's kind of summary of what Tibetan Buddhism is, and that's also very good. And all of this is kind of necessary to go into. In fact, we will be discussing some of what I'm experiencing, actually reading the Bardo Todo again in the House of Wu today, because it's not just intellectual material. I suppose some people approach it that way, but it's really a map of consciousness, and it produces, I think, encountering that material will stir things within your mind that you may not be prepared for.
Yeah, I'm all for opening the consciousness, different levels of consciousness. A lot of people are allergic to that, but I'm all for it. And I could talk for an hour about evolution. Evolution is kind of my main thing.
Okay.
That's why I'm kind of here, because I feel like spiritual evolution, I feel like we're the point, we're the spear of evolution right here, right now. And once you see that, or since I've seen it, it's like, how can I help bring this new heaven on earth? How can I help bring that about? I'm convicted, like you are, for having a YouTube. I'm convicted to help bring that evolution of Christianity, of spirituality forward.